All right, so tomorrow night, we're longing for Panther hockey. That's not coming back for another week and a half. Tomorrow night, we got the start of the Four Nations tournament. United States, Sweden, Finland, Canada. Joining us now, NHL senior writer at ESPN, Greg Wyshynski. Greg, always good to have you on the program here. So we'll talk a little bit Panthers, but for folks who have been totally tuned into the Panthers defending their Stanley Cup title this year and have not looked in depth to this Four Nations tournament just yet, how was this created? How did this come about?
Well, first off, Four Nations FaceOff. The NHL didn't go through copious amounts of trademark litigation to make sure that they could call it Four Nations FaceOff without us using the TM name of it. But look, this is replacing the NHL All-Star Game. And it is a tournament that exists because, one, the players wanted more best-on-best international hockey. Two, the NHL wanted to draft a little bit off the Olympics in 2026 and create the first opportunity to see, Connor McDavid, Austin Matthews, the Tkachuk brothers wear their nation's jerseys for the first time in a best-on-best tournament. But most importantly, they couldn't figure out a way to do the World Cup without involving Russia. That's really why we have this format. We have this format because the Finns and the Swedes basically said, look, we're not participating in a tournament if you guys invite Russia in any way, shape, or form. The NHL said, okay, that's something we can't quite figure out. So we're just going to not invite Russia, Switzerland, Germany, a bunch of other countries, check the Czechs, and just focus on Finland, Sweden, USA, Canada, two huge international rivalries, and have ourselves a little round robin ahead of the Olympics.
Well, and so how did they determine not to have, like you said, Switzerland, Czech Republic? Like, how did they come up with, all right, we're not going to have Russia, that's fine, these are going to be the four countries?
Well, I think the reason they decided to do it this way is from what they've told me, timing. They are only taking a break. I think it's like a dozen or maybe 13 days at most in the regular season to hold this round robin tournament, based on the fact they wanted to hold it in two locations, Montreal and Boston, based on the fact that they had a limited time for this break, bringing the teams together, practice travel, the whole thing. I think they felt that expanding it beyond four teams might have been a little too adventurous. So this is what they settled on. But let's be honest. I mean, look, Saturday is Finland, Sweden in the afternoon, East Coast time, which means it's prime time back in Finland and Sweden. That is one of the more vicious sports rivalries in the world. And so that's going to be a money matchup. Later that night, USA, Canada, Bell Center in Montreal, 20,000 fans waving little flags, probably booing the anthem. Yeah. And the first chance we get to see like a couple of generations of stars represent their countries in a USA Canada best on best game. So that's why this exists. It exists pretty much for those two games. And then also hopefully a rematch between USA and Canada in the championship game in Boston next Thursday.
Have you heard much chatter from players from countries that are not participating that wish they could participate?
Yeah, they think it sucks. Like they clearly feel like it. David Pastrnak was the first and most prominent player of the Boston Bruins who came out and, was sort of bummed about there not being any participation for his country in this tournament. Look, there's a lot of pride in Switzerland. There's a lot of pride in Germany, where Leon Draisaitl is one of the three best players in the world right now. And to not have some of these stars involved in this tournament outside of the Russians that aren't participating, yeah, there's a lot of animosity. I mean, let's be honest, it's an exhibition tournament, so a lot of animosity might be overspeaking it, but there's definitely some perturbedness about the fact that this was limited to four countries and some great hockey nations were left on the outside looking in.
So World Cup is every 4 years. Is there a plan for how often we're going to do this?
No, I don't know if we'll ever do this again, to be honest with you. I mean, this is something that exists because they couldn't do a World Cup. And because of the proximity to the 2026 Olympics. Again, we have to remember, they didn't know until maybe like a year ago that they were going back to the Olympics, and that the IOC was going to satisfy all the things the NHL needed to have satisfied. So it kind of came together sort of quickly. I think the plan is Olympics 26, World Cup 28, Olympics 30, World Cup 32, and then we kind of go from there. And also keep in mind, this is replacing the NHL All-Star Game. And say what you will about the NHL All-Star Game, the thing prints money. I mean, like, it is a great opportunity for their sponsors to come out. They fill an arena, twice in the same weekend. They sell a ton of merchandise. I think it also is a way to have fans see David Pastrnak, Nikita Kucherov, Kirill Kaprizov, like Leon Draisaitl, all the players that aren't participating in this thing. It's a chance to see them up close and personal. So I don't think they really have an appetite to limit the number of All-Star games either. In fact, they're doing one before the Olympics next year. That's how bad they want to stage one.
How do teams of the players involved handle this? What I mean is, with the NBA, they hate when their players participate in the Olympics and in the World Games. Please don't play him so much. They get very nervous about all that. How does that dynamic work with the NHL?
Well, I mean, we should say, first of all, that the Olympics were actually collectively bargained between the league and the players. Like, it was a big thing for the players. So you get, obviously a huge amount of participation there. The Four Nations has been interesting to watch because we've had some players that haven't been able to make the cut despite being on the rosters because of injuries. And then we had one, Alex Pietrangelo of the Vegas Golden Knights, who basically said, look, I'm on Team Canada, but I'm good. I won a gold medal. I know my standing for the 2026 Canadian Olympic team. I'd rather rest up for the playoffs and the playoff run than participate in this tournament. And, he had earned the right to do that. Quinn Hughes of the Vancouver Canucks is probably the biggest name that is not participating in this tournament because of injury. His decision came right down to the wire. The team claims it was his call to make and gave him all the information he needs from the team doctors to make it. Would anybody be surprised if the Vancouver Canucks, who were fighting for a playoff spot, maybe said, hey, captain, perhaps not play in the exhibition tournament and rest up? No, we would not be surprised by this at all. So he's not participating. A couple of others are hurt. Jacob Markstrom of the Devils being one of them, their goaltender. But for the most part, everyone who was named to the rosters is playing. And I think the teams just had to be aware of A, how much it meant to the players to be a part of this, and B, how much it means to the league to have their best players involved.
How do you rank the four countries in this tournament?
Obviously Canada scares the hell out of me as an American because, I mean, they're going to be able to like trot out McDavid, Sidney Crosby, Nathan McKinnon, Cale Makar on the same power play, which is pretty good. Their defense, I think, is okay. I think the U.S. would have had the distinct advantage there if Quinn Hughes had played. And I think the U.S. has an overwhelming advantage in goal. I mean, Connor Hellebuck is the best goalie in the world. If you don't play him, you have Jake Ottinger, the Dallas Stars. The Canadians have Jordan Bennington, Sam Montembeault, Aiden Hill. Like, it's not even in the same class as the Americans. Overall, I'd put USA first based on that goaltending advantage and based on the fact that I think for the first time since the mid 1990s, when the U.S. played in the was it the Summit Series, the World Cup, one of the two, against the Canadians, and we're able to put out like Pat LaFontaine, Jeremy Roenick, and all the Mike Modano and all those guys. I think for the first time since then, they have the best assemblage of offensive talent they've ever had to stand toe to toe with what Canada throws at you. So I go USA 1, Canada 2, Sweden 3. They've just got a lot of talent up front, and they've got good goaltending. And then Finland 4. They're always scary. The Finns are always scary. They're like tenacious little insects that are just like always swarming around you, and they end up doing well in these tournaments. That being said, they've really been hit by injuries on their blue line. Miro Heiskanen, one of the best defensemen in the world, is not playing for them. So I'm going to have to rank them fourth. So USA, Canada, then Sweden, then Finland.
So how close are these teams? So if you have Finland 4, if in the round robin play, Finland beats the U.S., is that a shocker?
It's not a shocker. Like I said, I mean, Finland has the reputation of pulling off upsets and being underestimated. And it's not like they don't have talent on that team. They do. And it's not like they don't have goaltending that can rise to the occasion. They do. And obviously in hockey, a short track tournament like this, goaltending is the great equalizer. So if, Philip Gustafsson of the Swedes has the game of his life against Canada, they could beat Canada. And that's just how it goes. I would say it's the USA, Canada, then a gap to Sweden, and then a gap to Finland, though, is the way I would probably put it. Again, no guarantees. I think a lot of us go into this tournament expecting that USA and Canada will play in that championship game next Thursday. We get a double dose of this thing, one in Montreal, one in Boston. But I think the Swedes might have something to say about that before it's over. They're a deep and talented team.
Are the rules any different, or will it play out like an NHL game?
It's a round robin, so I think it's 3 points for regulation win, 2 points for an overtime win, 1 point for an overtime loss. I think they play a 10-minute overtime period. I want to say there's a little tweaks here and there, but nothing too revolutionary between what you see in the regular season and what you'll see in this tournament.
And all right, so like you said, Finland and Sweden is a huge rivalry. We know about US and Canada. Is the dream scenario in the championship game US and Canada?
Oh, God, yeah. I mean, like, I kind of believe that's why we're holding this tournament. I mean, it's not like they're putting a game over in Stockholm, right? It's in Montreal and Boston. So they clearly know they're getting one game in Montreal. And again, you can't divorce the undercurrents of current politics from this game, especially because the U.S. anthem has been getting booed at Canadian NHL games in the last 2 weeks. So there's going to be a whole other thing going on besides what's happening on the ice. But then obviously they'd love to run it back in Boston and have the Canadians entering that level of hostile territory. I hope it happens. As a fan, I think it'd be amazing to see that. But again, you have to, it's a tournament. And if you have one bad game against one of these other teams, all of a sudden they could be in a position to play in the championship game.
Finally here, Greg, how are the games selling? Do you have any idea? Are we going to have sold out buildings for these games?
To the surprise of no one, there are certain matchups that are more compelling than others. Those two games on Saturday, for example, pretty compelling. Sweden, Finland, and USA, Canada. Then you get a USA, Finland game, maybe not so compelling. They had some attendance issues in the World Cup back in 2016 as well, just with some of the games that didn't involve the US or Canada. I imagine the same will go for this tournament. I think Gary Bettman, the commissioner, recently said that the tournament is selling around World Cup levels, which should indicate where we are with it. But again, if there is the possibility of a USA Canada game in Boston, you would imagine that place is going to be filled to the gills.
The Panthers have 8 players involved across the 4 nations. That seems like a lot. Does anyone have more than 8 guys?
I don't know what the totals are, to be honest with you. That does seem like a lot. I mean, obviously the Finns being involved in the tournament certainly bumps up that number a little bit. But I mean, they've earned it, right? I mean, there's so many great players in the Panthers. It's not a surprise that they'd want them for this tournament. And then on top of that too, something that I've been saying about the Panthers all season, the core of that team is the type of players that you want in the playoffs, like the Kachucks and Reinhart and Bennett and all those guys. They just play the kind of hockey that you want in a big spot. So when you have those kinds of players, obviously you want them for a short tournament, right? I mean, it's hard. As much as people are like, what is this going to be? Is it going to be a glorified all-star game? Hard to imagine you're going to get that with Matthew Tkachuk involved.
Are we going to see Matthew and Brady on the same line? Can we put them together?
Them on the same line. I saw the line pairings earlier this week, and Mike Sullivan, Pittsburgh's coach, who's coaching Team USA, did not have the Kachucks in the same line. I'm like, look, man, we're replacing the All-Star game. You got to put a little razzle-dazzle on this. You got to put the Kachucks with Jack Eichel, and let's just go. How fun would that be?
Come on. One more here, Greg, about the Panthers. Like you said, they got a group of guys. They got a core of guys who are great in playoff hockey. They're first in the Atlantic now. They're 3 points ahead of Toronto, second overall in the East. Kind of feels like they're right where they need to be right about now.
Oh, yeah. I mean, especially the farther they can stay away from the absolute madhouse that is the Eastern Conference wild card, the better for them, because you have, I mean, everybody but Buffalo basically mathematically involved in the wild card at this point. They're cruising. I think you're seeing what you want to see out of them. No cup hangover, or we should say probably 2 years to the finals hangover at this point with the amount of hockey they've played. And then, Billy Zito and his group have earned the trust to go into the trade deadline, identify needs, and make some smart moves. I would love to see them add a little bit to their bottom 6. I would definitely love to see them add a little bit more to their blue line, maybe a puck mover, and kind of go from there. Those are the parts of the team that obviously atrophied a bit after winning the cup with some defections through free agency. I think they're cognizant of that, and I think to make another long run, they're going to need a few more grunts, and they've certainly earned the respect and the right to believe that they're going to find them.
Greg Wyshynski, ESPN senior NHL writer. Great job as always. Thanks, Greg. Enjoy the Four Nations face-off.
There it
you
is.
go. I got it right.
Look, my Disney overlords will pummel me if I don't get people to say the words correct. I'm kidding. They don't. I don't know. But it should be a fun tournament. I think again, Saturday, if you've got nothing going on in life, just park yourself in front of the TV for like 8 hours. Watch Sweden and Finland beat each other up, and then watch what's going to be an absolute chaotic USA-Canada game.
Awesome job. Thank you, Greg. I appreciate it.
Anytime.